Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome to Supervision Series, Session 8 or Chapter 8, depending on whether you're taking me in an online class, you're taking me to a face-to-face class, a hybrid class, or in one of my workshops. Remember, this section we're going to be talking about a supervisor as a leader, or an entrepreneur as a leader, or a small business person as a leader, just functioning as a first-line supervisor. Okay, so let's start on this. You already have the access to my concept maps. You already have the materials. If you're, like I said, you're taking me for a paid class. If this is just you found me on YouTube, congratulations. Hopefully you'll find me and locate me at one of the colleges that I'm teaching. Okay, so let's look at leading. When I'm looking at supervisors, some supervisors, we're going to find out what we had from our previous series, they are supervisors appointed because they have the by position by the company, the supervisor. But does that make him or her a good leader? Maybe, maybe not. The problem with first-line supervisors is that many first-line supervisors are promoted into that position or are thrown into that position because of their expertise in the subject area. Remember, the first-line supervisor is one who actually has to know how to do the task and able to transfer that task to a new employee. Where a middle manager, he or she has to know conceptually how that functionality or the task of the supervisor plays into the rest of the organization or the rest of the department that he or she is managing. Stating that means as a first-line supervisor, I don't have to know how to enter data into the engineering system. I have to understand that the engineering system is there and the data is available. How do I enter it? The day-to-day operation, that's my first-line supervisor or my direct report who does that. So now let's look at, so stating that, let's see, how do I improve? That's why you're taking this course or you're looking at this video, is how do I improve my leadership ability so I am not one of those leaders that's doing it by trial and error. Some do well, but remember, by the trial and error, by the time you learn it, you've upset a lot of individuals in your team, the company's not profitable, you have poor morale. A lot of things happens with the first-line supervisor, the relationship between me as a manager or first-line supervisor to my employees. So let's talk about the general. So you have my concept maps, and I have this out here. Remember, you can always slow me down. I'm going to try to make this in 20 minutes. Management function to influencing people to act or not act in a certain way. That's all a leader does. Don't do this, and because he or she is looking at the whole, not on their own personality, but the whole team. Okay, characteristics of a first-line supervisor. And you may have these characteristics. If I'm looking at this, let me just make this a little bit bigger. I'll put this at, I think I've been doing it 250. Works out pretty good, and that's just the size so you can see it. Okay, perfect. So when you're looking at your smartphone and everything else. Okay, so if I'm looking at what characteristics of a first-line supervisor, you have all these. I could use this. He or she has sense of responsibility. They're self-confident. High energy level. I'm hyper. I talk quickly. Empathy. Empathy means I could put myself in that individual's shoes. A lot of times, first-line supervisors, they were that individual. So they know where their rationale, they know where they're coming from. Internal locus of control. There's two types of internal locus of control and external locus of control. And I have a whole series on that. If I'm looking at external, let's talk the one that's not mentioned. External locus of control means if something happened to me, I blame the environment, I blame my boss, I blame my wife, I blame my kid, whatever. I blame everybody, but not taking the responsibility for myself. Same forces, same things happen to me, but I have an internal locus of control. I say, okay, things happen. What could I do to change the situation, to change the forces? What can I do to make sure it doesn't happen or overcome it? That's the internal locus of control. That's what a manager does. He does. I mean, sure, the forces are affecting me. The economy's bad, but what can I do to work in a terrible economy? That's where creativity. Internally, I said I could do this. Okay. And then sense of humor. I joke around in some of my classes. A lot of times when people take me online and see my face, I'm like this. But when they meet me, I'm a very personal person. But I may not express myself. A little humor, not just joking around. That I'm human. It relieves tension. It puts people at ease. You feel you are like anybody else. You can joke at your mistakes. That's okay. I fell down. I made a mistake. Oh, geez, I hope I don't happen like that. Or I could say, oh man, I really feel bad. So remember, Humor, sense of humor, is a way of relieving stress. Some people, when they giggle or anything else, they may think they're not taken seriously, but they may be a stress reliever. When you take me for another series on stress, I think in the series of supervision we'll be doing on stress. Okay, now here are some leadership theories. You have formal. Remember, when I look at formal, is what appointed by the organization. And if you notice, I got male and female, because when we talk, I had a whole section on gender. Here I'm just going to talk briefly. And then I have the informal, appointed by and not sanctioned by the organization. Remember, I don't have to, formally, I am the supervisor. George Mochocki, superintendent, or whatever George Mochocki is, I am the supervisor. By the organization. But I could also be a leader, informal leader, that people come to me because they respect me. I have the expertise. As a supervisor, I have to understand he or she may not have that formal authority, but they are just as powerful, if not more powerful than I am as a leader, because they have that connection. They have the leadership skills. Ability to influence behavior people. I think the page changed here, so I'll get rid of the page. You don't have the book. I'll get rid of the pages. Okay. Now, there's two types of theories. You have autocratic. That means leader retains all a great deal of authority. That's a dinosaur. And sometimes you need it, like in ER, emergency, you have to have the autocratic leader in that position. But outside, you have to be more of a participant. They centralize all the power, enjoys giving orders. Followers have little input. It's almost like a dictatorship, for lack of a better word. More of them now is democratic, or what we call participative management, participative leadership. Shares power and information. I don't know everything. If I get more people involved, I can make a better decision, I have more input. Participative style and decision and problem solving. Laissez-faire is leaders uninvolved. I don't care. Do whatever you want. Let the subordinates run. It's like, here's the prison. You take care of everything else. I don't care. Hopefully it works. That is not a way you manage. Even if you want to be a participator, you have to have some structure in the individual. And you see some parents do that with their kids. Oh, let them go. They'll grow up. We all want to. They need some direction. They need something, or they're going to try to call out, what do you want me to do? Tell me how far. What are my boundaries? Allows groups to do as please. Groups make all the decisions. Sometimes those decisions are, I don't want to work. Let's make, okay, we're going to take a time off today, okay? Now, possibility of, let's see, for retaining authority. If I'm a supervisor, how do I retain authority? Now, I look at here, I see how this comes, and basically when I come in here, it has the same thing. It just makes it easier in the graph because I like to do some visual. Basically, authority retained by manager makes a decision, and these are different scenarios. I can make the decisions and announce it. I decide to announce it and give the individuals my rationale for it. I could sell it. My background is marketing and management. So basically, I'd rather sell the decision to them, and then I present the idea and invite questions. I present a tentative decision. Subject is change. Remember, these are all different scenarios depending on the situation. We're going to find out what all the different theories. Manager presents the problem and gives suggestions from and makes the decision. Manager defines the limits and has the group to make the decision. I do that a lot of times. I'll say, here's what has to happen. I need this. I can make the decision my own. In my mind, I always know what I'm going to do, what I think I should do. I want the team to come up with a better buy-in and a better success rate. But you have to give them a time limit. If they don't have the time set, you let me know by Friday what does the team come up with a decision to this problem, how you want to solve it. If Friday passes and it comes Monday, I'm already making a decision. You told us we could make the decision by Friday. Otherwise, I already have the decision, and here's how we're going to go. I go back to this one, make the decision, and announce it. Here, they still have some flex. Once I do that once, they know George says by Friday, they'll come up and say, because George already has an idea. They don't know which way I'm going, but this way, what happens is you're developing your employees to be empowered and make decisions on their own. You know what I mean? So this way they could come up with an idea or a decision, but now they're looking at, does the decision help me as a team, but also help the organization, my customers, all my stakeholders? But that's what the decisions in management and team decisions are supposed to accomplish, is how do I make everything else work together to satisfy the customer, my ultimate goal, internal, external. And manager presents subordinates to function with limits defined by the supervisor. Remember, you control that. So we have that, no problem. Now, when I look at the managerial grid, you have the book, you have the handouts. Managerial dread is representation, is a style on two dimensions. It looks at the task of a leader and it looks at people-oriented. So I'm looking at the task of the leader is concern of production. Task leaders are basically production-oriented. Let's get done. You got to do the task. Don't worry. Let's get it going. And those are good in a certain situation. Focuses on the job to be done and the goals to be accomplished. Now you have another type of leader, and a lot of times what's going to happen, you have both of these types of leader. You have another type of leader is basically oriented types of leader. He or she is basically looking at, let me see what I'm going to do here. Let me just, okay, sorry, I just put it on pause. So hopefully it's just like a little blimp in what do you call it, in our presentation here. Okay, so he's concerned more about managing people. What has to happen, some are more this way, some are more this way. I'm trying to find, me as a first-line supervisor, a combination of both. Sometimes I have to be a task-oriented, sometimes I have to be people-oriented. But I try to find a mixture, not too much task, not too much people-oriented, a combination of both. Now the rationale is that supervisor helps employees seek their meaningful work, add to the dictionary, gives them resources to get the job done, expresses appreciation for their work, contributes to positive results, and makes employee feel satisfied. And we've had that when we were looking about motivation and everything else. Now, if I'm looking at this, the grid basically has middle of the road style, country style, improvised style, task-centered, and team management style. So I'm going to put on the grid. So someplace in the grid it has all this. When I'm looking at this at the grid, country club, thoughtful attention needs to people to satisfied relationship. It depends on, and here you'll have the situation and the task. So it depends on where you fit in on the grid. It doesn't have the thing. So if I'm on this thing's team management, it depends on the situation and the task. Remember the people. And when I find that combination, is where I should be utilizing those managerial skills. A middle of the road manager, adequate organizational performance possible through balancing necessity to get out the job done. So when I look at the grid is where it falls in, and how, am I more task-oriented or I should be more people-oriented? Depends on the situation, what it's going to tell me. Okay, so we have that. Now, we're going to close this managerial grid. It's just a tool. When you're looking at all these Fiedler's contingency model, the Blanchard theory, all these are different models because as a manager, remember, we're all individuals, we're all different. My team, the situation, the company, the environment, at the time, everything changes. Every employee is unique. There's no, so this just gives me tools I can pull out. What's going to happen here? How will this work? What works well for me here? We all will have our own preferences, but should be open, flexible to take in another way of looking at things depending on the situation that does not fit into the normal pegs or classifications that or little boxes that we put things in to solve problems. We just do that when you take psychology. It's just how our mind works. We like to categorize and try to resolve issues within those categories. But sometimes something comes in that doesn't fit into the category. Okay, so a contingency model, if I'm looking at the contingency model, it also looks at structure. It looks at the task-oriented leadership. It looks at the relationship leadership and the consideration. So when I'm looking at the task-oriented, leaders who primary concern to ensure the subordinates perform at a high level. So remember, I'm back at the managerial grid. Fiedler's just explaining a little bit more. He's expanding it like in a contingency model to the managerial grid. Okay, so ensures that the subordinates perform at a high level. I have to, right? Now, relationship, leaders whose primary concern is to develop good relationship. Remember, I'm doing the managerial grid, develop good relationship with the subordinates and to be liked by them. And what happens is this leader-member relationship, when you look at the grid, is the extent to which followers trust me as a first-line supervisor, are loyal to their leader. You want to be loyal. A determinant of how favorable a situation is for leading. So if I have them in here and I have a good relationship, if I had to be task-oriented, just, hey, we've got to get this done. I understand. No messing around. Get to it. You do this. You do this. I'm now all of a sudden taking on, instead of participating, I'm taking on a directive approach, but it's a short-term situation forces that are forcing me to act in this way. Okay? And then the consideration is managerial behavior indicating respect, trust, and cares about the subordinate. So if I have that relationship, I could go back and forth depending on the situation. People know, hey, you got to get this order done. It's $1 million order. Has to be done. No messing around, no playing around, no talking. I said, do this, and get it in an ER. When you look at an ER doctor, most of them are very friendly. They're responsive. They work with the teams. But when that person comes in there and he or she is a life-threatening, it's no more, let's see what we're doing. He's taking on that autocratic type of directive. You do this, you did this, because he is the one that's in the position to make those decisions real quickly. He's analyzing. That's why he's in that position. That's why he's in the leadership, to help that individual survive. And then afterwards, then he's go, okay, now we could relax. Okay, do this, and we could calm down and get do other. You do the surgery, you do the stitching up. The person is out of the critical risk, and now I could go back into my normal participative mode. Remember, a supervisor. Don't always be nice, friendly, and everything else. The situation calls for you to be directive and to address the issue. You should be able to switch roles or your styles and utilize them properly, okay? Then the next one is the Hersey-Blanchard theory. He looked at the life cycle theory of leaders' behavior, leadership style, different leaderships, adjust to a degree of task and relationship behavior in response to growing maturity of their followers. Remember, all these different theories are looking at this managerial grid. Where do I fit in? What is the situation? What's the task? How much should I have a relationship? So now, when I'm looking at this, instead of going through all the different styles, I'm just going to go right into the grid, because you already have my handouts and everything else. You have the supplements and everything else. I'm just giving you a quick overview so how to focus it. I'm looking at the relationship behavior. I'm looking at the task. And if it's low task relationship, depending on the relationship is where if I have a high relationship, I could have a high relationship and lower task. It depends where I fit in. Some managers, depending on the situation, are in here. If you're always on a low task, that means I'm looking at relationship is low and my task relationship is low. I'm going to be in this quadrant. How do I get myself into this high task and high relationship is where I want to be. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Individuals aren't there, or somebody's sick, something happens. I may end up in here. How do I move myself up? Do you see this curve? It goes up. You like to be in this area and here, but we go up and down depending on the employees, depending on the situation, depending on the forces. Remember, as a supervisor, you have to be flexible. You're always adjusting. You're looking, well, how am I going to respond to this situation? I'm always thinking the SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, and opportunity. What do I do in this situation? And now if I had the team support, I have advisors, team within them. They might not, my informal leader. What do I do? Hey, could you help me out? Because he or she has the expertise. Utilize these individuals. They know what to do. They get you some suggestion. How could we overcome this? How could we get out of this situation? You need the team to be working. And that's what makes a good leader. Okay, so that takes care of that one. And I'll close this off, and let me slide over here. Now, the Pat Gold theory. If I'm looking at contingency model of the leadership, again, the rationale is, the Pat Gold, and I might have it in here, make desirable and achievable rewards available to our organization. When I'm looking at, I know motivation and everything else intrinsic, bottom line is the dollars. People still want to see, and it may not be dollars, maybe a promotion, maybe recognition, maybe getting some gift or whatever, or a parking spot, anything else I'm looking at. But what it's going to what it's basically stating is that what path and goals that basically helps me get the rewards, but those rewards are a thank you from the supervisor or from the organization. If I do this, here's how I'm going to be rewarded, and here's the path I have to take. Okay? So now, in a nutshell, all right? Remember, you already read the material. I'm just summarizing. So kind of give you, so you're not at the first exposure. You already have some information. So if you don't have the book or you don't have any of the additional information, just take this as a general overview. But those of you, some of you haven't read the book. Some of you haven't done some of the homework. You're at a loss here. This is just all Greek or Polish or something I don't understand, okay? So participative. I'm looking at the leader. Participative behavior and achieving behavior. Involves seeking input from followers. I'm a participative supervisor or manager about methods for improving business operation. Now, achievement behavior, and it involves setting challenging goals for the follower to meet, expressing confidence that the follower can meet that challenge, and when he meets that challenge and achieves that challenge or the result, then I should reward them accordingly. And it's not always a pat on the back. It could be a gift certificate. It could be a dinner out with your wife or your loved ones or your other your partner or whatever. So as long as you're looking at that, you should have some kind of achievement behavior. You involve them, but here's what happens when I actually achieve it. So now the method on how. Leaders can motivate subordinates to identify by desired outcomes, rewarding them for high performance. Sometimes I might just reward them because they may be medium performers or low performers. I always want to push them up, but they may not have the skills or the attributes. They may just starting up with the organization. It takes a little while for some people when they come into the learning cycle of an employee. Maybe he just started or she just started, or they just don't have the skill sets. But I may reward them and say, hey, you're the best striving, the best effort put into the team. And it's still looking, the whole goal is not just to reward them to say, hey, you didn't get anything, here's a reward. I play golf every now and then, and I'm not the best golfer, and I realize that I'm the worst golfer, but they always reward me. The person who's got the highest score, not the lowest score, but the highest score is George. So I get something. And the other person in the middle, they don't get anything. It's either the high achiever or the low achiever. But those are the two individuals you basically reward and get the acknowledgement. What happens as a first-line supervisor, you forget the people in the middle. They're the one that actually keeps the organization or keeps your team functional and being on target. Okay? That's a path and goal. We get rid of that one. And now servant leader. If I look at a servant leader, the rationale of a servant leader involves putting other people's needs first, aspiration, interests above your own. A good servant leader is, I'm a manager, I went out and there's some problem. We have to get this product out in time. And I know functionality because I came out of the workforce, so I know how to do the work. I'm not talking about union issues or anything else. But in a pinch, I will help. No, I'm the boss. That's your job. That's what you've been paying. I'm at this level. I'm no longer servant level. I place myself above them because I got pride. I got whatever. That is not going to build a relationship. What gets the relationship, if you look at Southwest Airlines, the president of the company goes on there, he waits on people, he helps anything. The pilot helps the stewardess. Everybody helps each other. That's the culture of Southwest Airlines. I know now they got Trans-Am merging. Now they have to bring the other culture in. The culture may change a little bit, but the culture is to help everybody else. I'm a servant type of a leader. I'm not giving away my authority. I'm not doing their work, but in a pinch, I will help out. Okay, so I'm a good listener. I'm empathetic. That means I listen to them. I understand them. I try to heal them. I'm aware of them. And I'm basically persuasive. Okay? Now, entrepreneurship type of a leader. All leaders have to be some entrepreneurs. The rationale is believing that one plays an important role at the company they're working at or in your team rather than an unimportant role. The skill sets I need, I have to be a visionary. I'm a problem solver. What's the difference between a problem solver and a complainer? If you come and say, hey, it's too hot in here. What the heck? What are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? That's a complainer. Oh, my God, there goes George complaining. What I want, hey, it's too hot in here. But I'll tell you what, I am going to call. That's a problem. I'm already almost as I brought up the problem. But instead of just leaving it there, I'm going to say, you know what? It's too hot in here, but what I'm going to do, I am basically going to go, I already made a call to maintenance, and they're going to come in here and adjust the thermostat or adjust the heater. Now I'm no longer a complainer, I'm a problem solver. That's what I want to hear. I bring in the problem, and I have a solution. The supervisor does not have to accept my solution, but I'm no longer looking as a complainer, but as a problem solver. I'm a risk taker. You have to take a risk. If you're not a risk taker, you're not going to be a good leader. You're just going to be in the middle. You have to take the risk. You got to push the team, and part of it is on the risk. So that's an entrepreneur. Most small businesses, you fall into that category. That's the same trait. Whether I'm a middle manager, supervisor, I have to be an entrepreneur, out-of-the-box thinker. What happens? Individuals aren't robots. They're not pre-programmed. They have certain general attributes or traits, but that's it. We all think anything different. We have to be approached in a different way. Okay, choosing the leadership style. Okay, if I'm choosing my leadership style as a supervisor, first of all, I have to look at my subordinate. Characteristics of my subordinates. Do they need for independence? If they're brand new, I can't let them go. They don't know what to do yet. Readiness to assume responsibilities. Tolerance for ambiguity. That means risk. There's that uncertainty. And a lot of things, because of the environment, there's a lot of big uncertainties out there. I need individuals, employees that will be able to function in an uncertain environment. If I'm looking at technology, most employees that they always know that technology, there's an uncertainty. It may work, may not work. It's a different type of attitude, a different type of individual that will be able to work with uncertainty and still prosper. Interest in the problem to be solved. Remember, instead of a complaint, I'm a problem solving. Understanding and identification. Now we're going to be talking about the situation. So when I look at this, I'm looking at the skills of the subordinate, what style did I utilize. Then I'm going to be looking at the situation. Now the situation is basically going to be, if I look at the situation which we'll be looking about is characteristics of the situation, type of the organization, the effectiveness of the group, the problem or the task, and the time that's available to complete the task. So like we mentioned before, depending on which, my employees, the forces, the environment, which leadership style I will choose. Okay, now if I'm looking at supervisors' relationships. Now the supervisors' relationship is what relationship I have with my employees. I'm a first-line supervisor, so I have several relationships that I have to maintain. People who work for me, or when I work for, remember, even though I was a middle manager, I had a person above me that I had to report to. So she looked at me as one of the direct reports, and I had people reporting to me. So what relationship do I, as a first-line supervisor or owner, have with my employees? What relationships do I, as a supervisor, have with my immediate manager, the one above me? What relationship do I have with my peers? And these relationships, when we talked earlier, has connections and gives me credibility and allows me to adjust depending on which way I think I should be going on the situation. But if I have a poor relationship with my employees, I will not get them to do more except what I tell them step by step, because they're only in compliance. If I have a good relationship with my employees, they're going to do more above and beyond what I require, because they're going to be, they want to help me out because I have a different relationship. I'm not looking at being their friend. I mean, though I have a lot of friends that are my employees, I'm looking at it that they respect me and they understand that this is the task. Not that they like me, because if they like me, if I'm building my relationship on like, I'll never make them do anything they don't like. But that's not reality, okay? So my relationship with my employees, developing trust, the supervisor should engage in fair, predictable behavior, fulfill promises. If I told you I'm going to do something, I will follow it, or I'll pay some kind of penalty. I'll apologize. I want them to do. It's a two-way street. If I tell them I want the reports on time, and they ask me, hey, do you mind filling out this thing so I could get my job or a reference or whatever, and I'm delaying it, hey, they're going to say, hey, that means I'm more important than you are. If I'm looking at that, we're a team. And teams, even though I am the leader, remember, a servant leader, I have to empathy, look at the individual. To them, I may think that's not that important to me, but to them that could be a very important issue. So I try to, if I tell them I'm going to do it, it doesn't mean I have to do it right now. Say, hey, look, I'm kind of busy right now, Sally or Jack. I'll give it to you by the end of the day. End of the day, he or she will have it on their desk or in their inbox. I don't make them come back for me, unless it's some personal or private. I will basically put it, and I will try to find that individual. That's how you develop respect within your team member. I expect certain things done, and then when you ask me for certain things within my control, I will come back and I'll respond to it, okay? Now, the other thing is, how do I manage my manager? Remember, so if I'm looking at how do I manage my manager, and they have the whole things, results, loyalty, cooperation, and communication. As a manager, what I am looking for, a little visual is kind of nice. other than seeing me, is loyalty. I want loyalty. Loyalty is while I'm working within the organization. When I leave that department, I go someplace else, I have to turn my loyalty to my new manager. And a lot of managers, when they bring me from one department, they want to see how much loyalty. I'm loyal to that person. I tell people, I will be loyal. I understand that. The other individual, my previous supervisor or manager, I still have respect. I got the connection, the network. I'm not going to do anything else unless I could help him or her out that's out of the realm of here. If I'm underneath your jurisdiction or underneath your control, working for you, I will ask you first, could I help the person? You are my first focus now. That's where the loyalty changed. I go from there, and I'm not being like I'm wishy-washy. I've taken on a new role. I'm in a new position. I'm working for a new manager. My loyalty should focus to that manager. Not the other person's still there. He could be a mentor. She could be a mentor. I can still communicate. I can still bridge the gap. That's why I was hired when I came out of the union, went into the management. They basically knew I still had friends there. I understand there. Even though I'm a manager now, I still make those connections, but it's on a different level now, okay? In cooperation between other managers, I need to cooperate with my manager, never stab him or her in the back or go around them. I communicate always, and I'm result-oriented. And if you look at a lot of managers, middle managers, when they come in, they bring in their own staff. And they bring in their own staff because they already have this loyalty to the individual. They know how to communicate. They cooperate. Not that there's their boyfriend or girlfriend or they owe something, okay? So that takes care of managers. Now, the next thing you're looking at is your peers. I'm not always, I may have, and the peers could be people in different departments or similar departments in different areas of the organization or whatever, or different businesses if I'm a small business manager. Do not go looking for things to criticize my peers with. And sometimes as an instructor, other students said, oh, this instructor is terrible. I said, well, I don't know. I know him as a person. He's very fair. He's very honest. I've never been in his or her class. And I let it go. I said, I don't want to hear about that. Because it could be a personality conflict. A lot of times as a supervisor, you may take over a team. Or you have a new team member. And you talk to the other supervisor. Oh, he's a pain in the butt. Or she's a pain in the butt. Complainer. Or he's a hard worker. Whatever. Remember, if I get that information, I try not to use the halo effect and tarnish that person, because it may. I try to give the person a clean slate. I don't ask the other supervisor unless he's a violent person. I should know that because it's the safety of the team, my own self. But usually I don't look at the personnel record because it could be a personality conflict between me and the employee. And it could be something I do. Everyone doesn't like me. A lot of students may like me. Some students may not like the way I teach or whatever. But, it could be a personality conflict. There's so many different variables. Everyone's unique. So I have to look at it. Is it a personality conflict by that manager and that employee didn't get along? Now that employee is working for me. If there's no, and all of a sudden he's doing a good job, and then the other person, oh, how he's doing? Did he kind of take advantage? No, I may in the back of my mind put it in there, but I try to give the person that ability, that clean slate. That's what you should do as a supervisor. Sometimes they're leaving out another department. They want that break. You should give them a break. You left your other team there. Some people you did well. Some people you didn't do well. You learn by trial and error, and now you have a new team. So how do I reformat the team and go forward, okay? So go directly. If you have anything that the team is affecting your team, and you could go in there and says, because I'm not saying that your members, I know you want them to be cross-functional, horizontal, talking to other team members, but your team members always come into talking to my teams, and my employees can't get the job done. If and like I say, because you kind of tell them to stay out. I don't mind them talking if it's business related, but not social related. He or she has too much time. And by the way, and he may come back and say, yeah, I know, but my workload's down. I got to keep him busy. I'm running out of things to do. Oh, fine. Bring him over. I could give you work that's functional within your department, jobs other done, and then keeps him or her busy. You see what I'm talking about? So I'm not criticizing. I'm going directly to the person instead of going around that person, going to the supervisor. George is not managing his people. His employees are wandering all over. They may be wandering to resolve issues with the customers. I have to talk to the person here first, give him the first shot. No different than when an employee comes to me, goes around my direct the supervisor, and comes to me complaining about one of my direct reports. First question I ask him, I have an open door policy. Did you talk to the first line supervisor first? Could he or she resolve the issue? No, I didn't. Talk to them first, then come to me. I'm not trying to circumvent the chain of command. Remember, unity of command. After they talk to him and they come up and say, no, Bob said no, no, no. I said, okay, I'm going to talk to Bob and see what I can do. I talked to Bob and said, Bob, you didn't give him the time off. This is the 6th time I gave him off. I didn't charge him any time off. I gave him 3 other times. I paid for him. I compensated, whatever, gave him some overtime, whatever. I said, but now this is I can't do it all the time. You see, there's always 2 sides to the coin. You get the one information here, and then you always have to look at the other side of the coin, and you are basically the judge and say, okay, does it make sense? Now I could go back to the employee because I see the whole picture. It's not skewed one way, okay? And focus on the problem and its consequences to the organization, not the personality. Okay, so that takes care of that. And I try to cooperate. The more you cooperate with your other teams, the more you get that name that you could come up and do things. A lot of times I cooperate, I do a lot of things with other teams, but sometimes when they're taking advantage, I may bring something up and say, hey, you already stretched yet. It's not that I'm a team player, because everyone already knows. Georgia goes above and beyond, but I'm not one to be taken advantage of, because if I take advantage and do other team members' work and they're walking around, that means my team's going to say, George, why are you taking all this work? Their teams are doing nothing, they're laughing at it, because you're taking all the work without looking at what are the ramifications to my team. Remember, you're always looking out for your team, not for yourself, for your team. And you want your team to always be cooperative, and you because that basically is a reflection on you. Okay, so that takes care of this. Now, one thing I'm going to talk about, and I throw this in, and anytime I get an opportunity, I'll teach a leadership thing, leadership series for brand new supervisors coming in. What you see now is more women coming into that role. So women are an asset, but remember, more women in management than 10 years ago. But there's a stereotype of women. And when I'm looking at stereotype, I don't like to stereotype. There's a difference between stereotyping and generalization. Generalization means generally most women have these attributes. Stereotyping means all women have these attributes. So I'm looking, is that they're nurturing, supportive, concerned with interpersonal relationships. Those are good. Those are all team building. But there are a lot of women that are not nurturing, they are not supportive, and they are meaner than hell. And those of you, in a business world, that's reality. Everyone's different. But generally, most women have that nurturing, which is what I'm trying to, those skills, those attributes I need in building teams. Now, here's the men's stereotyping. Men are more directive, more focused on task accomplishment. Not all men. Some men have emotions, more personalities, but most of us, we're very directive. And that's because that's how we were raised. We're nurtured that way from childhood up in schools and everything else. So we kind of pick on those attributes or skills, okay? Now, so research suggests that male and female managers, remember, just research, so don't say one's nurturing and one's more task. They could be both. Remember, as a man, I don't want to be all task. Remember, we just went through the pat and go. We went through all these different, right in here, different leadership traits. Remember, formal, autocratic, democratic. We have all these different models all looking at relationship. So what's going to happen is, since most men like this, you have to, when I would pair up supervisors that work together, I would put one with a woman, one with a man, so they could work on each other's skills and develop them. I want the person who is both task-oriented and people relationship building. And so that's what's the new manager going forward that has both of these, for lack of better words, stereotypical attributes or qualities in both. And so male and female, research male and female in leadership position behave in similar ways. They do not engage in more consideration than women. Men do not engage more initiating structure than women. So what research is telling me, there's no difference. But where does the stereotypical idea comes from? How we view people. We have that idea. All men like that. And I use the idea of Chinese. I have Chinese students sometimes come up to me, and other students during my stat class or during my finance class or some of the classes that I teach, a math class, math class for business. And what did they come in? They want me to do all the homework. They're asking me for how to solve this problem. I don't know math. I'm terrible at math. I'm Chinese, but they stereotypically think all Chinese are all math wizards. There's a billion plus 5 Chinese. They're not all math wizards. Or they all know computers. ITs, all supposed to be people from India. There's a 1.5 billion Indians from India. They're not all computer experts. Do you see what I mean? So you have to understand that. All right. So research does suggest that men and women differ in different leadership styles. Remember, if I look at theory X and theory Y, theory X is autocratic, theory Y is participative. I am more of a participative type of a manager. Correct this? I'm a more participative type of a manager. But for some individuals, I have to become that autocratic thing. That's not my mold. That's not how I like to operate. But I'll turn it to them all. You either do this or I'm going to fire you. And also, whoa, that's not the George. Remember, I change my mold, my style, depending on the situation, depending on an employee. In a nutshell, this is kind of nice. So women tend to be more participative than men, involving subordinates in more decision-making and seeking their input. That's what I want to do with teams. I should pick up that skill set. Male managers tend to be less participated than female managers, all right, and wanting to do things their own way, making more decisions on their own. Men tend to be harsher it's supposed to be then. Sorry, yeah, you see, I make my corrections. I'm going then harsher. It is all right. My mistake. Harsher when they punish their subordinates than women. So I had to find a balance in between. So that's what research is showing you. Remember, women are coming in there. There's more women, and I always kind of tease people, trying to bring the humor. What they said in here. I asked a question, and the class is mixed, or sometimes there's more men or women. Now, if I'm looking at a lot of the class in leadership, there's a tendency to be more women in the leadership, more women in college than men, and more women graduate. That's just what research is showing. So I'm in there and I said, how many here would like to have a woman as a manager? Some women raise their hand, and some men, I never have a woman as a manager. I've never worked for a woman as a manager. I'll find another job. And then I tease them. I said, well, don't ever get married. And I'm just joking around because usually it's a relationship between two. No one is higher than the other ones. But some women have a way of manipulating me to do things, okay? So in a nutshell, remember, ladies, you don't manipulate, you bring participation. I know when I'm manipulative, I basically say what if things. How would you do this to change it? Not manipulative. I try to bring them into the table and try to, through concessions and through discussions, try to lead them in the right direction, that this is the best course of action, not only for the team, but for the organization. Manipulating and say, I'll give you this, do this, and you're basically like a puppy being trained. Remember, when I do my consulting, is again business consulting and education. And people say, why do you pay the education? Because training means I train a dog. And certain functionality, I had to train someone. So a firefighter has to be trained in case of this situation. You don't think about it, but basically I want to educate a person, because educating a person, he or she basically, if the situation changes, they're educated enough to critically think and make those decisions, because they're empowered and not do it one way or the other way. If I'm in a training situation, if this happens, you have to be responsive. You're basically going autopilot because you're trained to respond a certain way to minimize that. Remember, training, education, you need both. I need to train them in certain skill sets to do certain things automatically, but I have to also educate them in something that happens. One aspect of my training is missing. How do do I stop? How do I work around it, be flexible and creative? And that's because I educated them, understanding each step of the training mechanism, which is automatic, on autopilot when we do a lot of things. But that's how I basically distinguish the difference between training and education. If I'm looking at a learning organization or a learning team, is basically one who is educated and one who knows how to get research, one who evaluates the data, and one who knows how to take that new data and apply it and change to meet the customer's needs and meet the needs of the team and meet the needs of the organization. All right? So that took care of my supervision. I know there's a couple. I had my grandson walk in, and one of them I tried to stop and edit it. But overall, you have the picture of what's going on here. So if I'm looking at what we covered today in this series, And I'll go back in here to 200. And so we talked about the definition of leading, different characteristics of a successful leader. We talked about the different theories, the how do I retain authority and still be participative and give some of the authority away to empowerment. We talked about the managerial grid, which was the focus, and then the other ones are contingency model, using the managerial grid, which basically looks at the task, how much tasks. Do I provide? Am I a task manager or am I a relationship manager? And what you're going to find out, if I do a balance, I'm in here, I want to be high tasks and high basically relationship, and that's in that quadrant that I am the most competitive. Now, because my team is the best, other teams are benchmarking against me. That's how I know I'm the best, because they're using me as the benchmark, the baseline. And then Fiedler's model, the other theory, the path and goal, is from how do I receive the rewards, is by follow this certain path. Entrepreneurship, leadership is creativity, flexibility, choosing the right style depending on the situation, the employees, and the relationship between not only my employees, relationship between my managers, and relationships between my different peers. If I have a poor relationship with another department, trust me, my employees, when they go over there, they're going to say, well, because they try to satisfy me, they're going to have a poor relationship with their employees, because we're not communicating, or they see there's a tension between us. And then gender and leadership. There's more women coming in there. We should be able to have a good diverse mixture of men and women, and because that mixture, the employees knows the difference between relationship and task, and as a supervisor, that I have that balance between the attributes, that the nurturing, the team building, and the basically directness and focus of the male. Once they start working together, I pick up the different attributes. And not only did I pick up those attributes, my team members will pick up the attributes. So when I move on to the next level, I've already developed my team so he or she could either be managed by a male or by a female or by an individual that has that balance. Okay? So my name is Dr. George Mochocki. This is Session 8 or Chapter 8 in the series of Supervision. And I'll see you in our next short video. Thank you very much. Bye.